Welcome to Witch Draft. This is Jason Mark Anderman. Today we're going to dive into the second half of our limitation of liability analysis. In our previous post that is linked to on this blog post, you can learn all about consequential damages in a limitation of liability clause. Today I'm going to talk about the hard cap. And what's the hard cap about? Well, we previously talked about knocking out consequential damages, those kinds of enormous damages that can be massively more than the amount paid under the deal. This particular analysis covers when you not only have knocked out consequential damages, but you're also saying, if you're going to sue me for things under the deal, I'm just going to limit to a certain amount, a certain dollar amount or a certain time-limited amount, some way where I know that it's only going to be so much in terms of money that I could possibly face in damages in having to pay you if you sued me. And generally, it's going to be a vendor who's going to want to protect themselves with a limitation of liability because they're the most likely to be sued because they're doing most of the performance under the contract. They have most of the obligations to provide the goods and services. Customers usually have very few obligations under a contract other than to pay what they owe. So generally, vendors want limitation of liability. Customers are not exactly pushing for it. One thing, first and foremost, you're going to think a lot about is whether or not there's going to be mutuality. And mutuality is basically the idea that if the vendor says, hey, I'm going to have a limitation of liability, I'm going to have a hard cap here, you can only sue me for so much, well, the customer might turn around and say, guess what, I'm going to ask for the same thing, I want mutuality. So you just kind of need to determine whether or not this is going to apply to both parties here, or whether it's going to apply just to the particular vendor who's selling things. What kinds of things are going to be done here to limit the amount, to have this hard cap? Well, you might put in a one-year limit. So you might say, well, you can't sue me for any damages that you incurred more than 1 year before your cause of action arose, the bad thing happened that gave you the right to sue me. You might say, hey, you know what? You can't sue me for more than the amounts that were paid under the contract. So if you only paid me $1,000 under the contract previous to suing me, well, guess what? You can't sue me for anything more than $1,000. Now, a customer might push back on that to say, well, I'm going to instead limit that to the amount I paid you, the amounts that I owe you that I haven't yet paid, and for a long-term contract with required payments, the amounts that I owe you in the future, such as a monthly minimum or an annual commitment or something of that nature. So a customer would push back on this and say the amounts paid, due, and payable under the term of the contract. And then total contract value, and that really gets into that exact issue. The other thing that people dive into a lot is going with a multiple. So basically, if you're a customer and a vendor presents you a limitation liability clause limiting it to the amount paid under the contract, first and foremost, you might try and expand that to the amount paid, due, and payable, but you also might then put a multiple on that. So you might say, well, I will limit it to that, but it'll be 3 times the amounts paid, due, and payable under the contract, or 4 times, or 5 times, or however much that you can possibly get away with that you want to specify. And that's pretty much kind of the game that you go back and forth with between the vendor and the customer in terms of trying to nail down what the amount of the hard cap can be. Thanks for checking out Witch Draft, and have fun using it.